Good morning, dear partners. Good morning, dear UNHCR colleagues. You're most welcome to day 3 of the 2023 NGO Consultations. This session this morning is on program and partnership, but we did also have other sessions in the previous 2 days. And we would really encourage you to stay with us to the end so that we can tie in this program and program reform and partnership session with some of the discussions we had on localization, some of the discussions we had on livelihoods and on solutions and on gender equality, which happened in the past 2 days. So we really look forward to going with you to the end at 12 noon. We start now at 9, and this session will go until 11. We'll have a 30 minutes break to 11:30. Then we'll have a 1-hour session just to listen to the recommendations compiled by NGO partners and the concluding remarks. So please stay with us until 12:30. So for this session on UNHCR program reform and partnership, I would like to introduce Mr. Gideon Mwawasi, who's going to be our facilitator for the session or moderator for the session. Mr. Gideon Mwawasi works for HIAS, as it indicates there. He's based in Kenya, and HIAS is our partner in the Kenya Refugee Program. But HIAS is also a partner in several other countries globally. So HIAS is one of our really strong partners. We're glad to have you, Mr. Mwawasi. He's a specialist on localization. So that's great. And on partnership. Mr. Mwawasi, you're most welcome, and good luck with the session this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. Good morning, everyone. I hope you had a good time getting to the office or wherever you are at, and welcome to this session. So just before we begin, just give you a breakdown of how this session will be conducted. We will be having 30 minutes presentation from our UNHCR colleagues on partnership reforms. Afterwards, we'll have a 20 minutes Q&A session, and following which we will be having a presentation from an NGO colleague on their views from NGO perspective. Then we will be having breakout rooms for 30 minutes to discuss some of the presentations. And then afterwards, we'll be having presentations from the groups reporting to the plenary for 15 minutes, followed by a 15-minute feedback session from our UNHCR colleagues. And so before I introduce our UNHCR presenters, I would like to give a little bit of background and context for this session. Over the past 16 years or so, we've had the principles of partnerships referenced in numerous discussions in the humanitarian and development sector. And so all these discussions and all the referencing of these partnership principles of partnership, we would want to take a step back and ask ourselves, what are they, sort of as a refresher? We're talking about equality, transparency, results-oriented approach, responsibility, and complementarity. So let's take a step and reflect on how these principles have impacted policy and practice in the sector across the board. Has this impact been so much so that we can make use of a palette that we use in international law? And for those of us who have interacted with international law principles, you've heard of something called customary international law, which entails certain rules that have attained a stature of law, even though binding even those who are not part of signatories to treaty. Coming back to the principles of partnership, can we say that these principles have attained a cultural stature that we make reference to them and abide by them, even when not referenced in agreements that we sign on to with our partners? Do we apply them in our relationships with our partners? And I mean all partners, donors, UN agencies, international NGOs, local and national NGOs. Can we say that we are true, we bear allegiance to them? And it's important to have this reflection because it will foreground our discussions going forward. And I hope we are all converts because we know and acknowledge that the people we serve, refugees, asylum seekers, stateless persons, and internally displaced persons, deserve and expect that of us, that we will be guided by these principles in all levels, at all levels, global, regional levels, national levels, and local levels, to ensure that protection is effective. And therefore, as we proceed into this session, let us strive to join the dots between the previous sessions we've had over the past 2 days and recognize that partnership is the golden thread that binds it all together. Let us constructively engage with the presentations that we're going to have with a view of how to get better, how to deliver protection in partnership, how to build strong partnerships, how to encourage and remain accountable to the persons we serve. And as it has been referenced in the earlier sessions that we have had before, this is a platform for genuine consultations, openness, constructive criticism, a safe space to question practices, and most importantly, to provide solutions to strengthen our engagements. And with that, I would like to welcome Rob to begin his presentation.
Thanks so much, Gideon, and thank you to everybody for inviting me and also my colleague Katerina Tote to this event. Katerina, maybe you could just say hello, and then I'll get us on the way.
Hello, good morning, colleagues. Pleasure to be with you. My name is Katarina Tote, and I work on Rob's team as Head of Operational Partnership Management. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Katerina. So, Katerina and I are delighted to be here, and we'll spend a few minutes at the start here with a presentation about our ongoing reforms of the way in which we work with funded partners, so the partners that we provide funding to. We obviously don't consider ourselves just to be an administrator of grants, financial grants, but we hope that the contribution that we can as an organization make to partnership is more complete and embodies both financial resources, but also the other contribution that comes from advocacy and amplifying messages and supporting growth of communities that we work with and for. So, but we will focus this morning on the reforms that we're making relating to funded arrangements. And we'll try to, even though we haven't been party and participants in the last couple of days of meetings, we hope that what we will present will be of relevance and resonate with some of your discussions to this point. So it was a few years ago that we in UNHCR launched a number of reforms globally on how we can indeed better embed the principles of partnership into our funded partnership arrangements. We recognized in a few years ago, we recognized that of many UN agencies, we had some of the most complex arrangements and bureaucratic arrangements when it came to our agreements and to the reporting requirements. And we recognized a real imperative, a real need for us to bring about changes to that regulatory regime in order for us as an organization to better serve and support and protect refugees, forcibly displaced and stateless persons in partnership with other organizations, other very important organizations, whether they be governmental, international, non-governmental, or national non-governmental. And in a few minutes, we'll reference the fact that we need to better support organizations at the community level. So we launched reforms that really looked at every aspect of our partnership regulations, starting from strategies, policies and guidance, procedures and systems, and also structures and personnel. And we wanted to bring about change that would simplify, increase predictability, empower our managers and empower our partners, and at the same time, improve risk management practices so that we can provide the assurance needed and the confidence needed for for those who provide funding. So governments primarily, they have faith and trust in our collective framework to ensure that results are being achieved. How would we do this? We needed to move away from a one-size-fits-all set of procedures and documents. The fact that we work with 1,700 organizations every year, roughly, we can't treat them all as the same type of organization. Some of them are small, some of them are large, some of them are governmental, some of them are non-governmental, and they all work in vastly different areas, whether it be education or health or nutrition or whatever it may be. Second, we needed to focus more on what a partnership should achieve and less on the mechanics of the day-to-day administration of funding and of activities. And thirdly, we needed to better utilize available data, work in collaboration, harmonization, or create greater coherence with other UN agencies and other regional structures to enable us to better mitigate risk together in this exercise. At this point, I'll hand over to Katarina for the next couple of slides.
Thank you, Rob. So a lot of the reforms that we've been working on are also very much geared at making us a better partner for community-based organizations and also many smaller local NGOs. And the slide here tries to sum up some of the obstacles that they've faced in partnering directly with UNHCR, because we know that our processes can sometimes be quite demanding and heavy and not necessarily something that a small organization can easily comply with. And so this has really been one of the key objectives from the beginning of our reform efforts that we've mentioned. So if you look at the top, you see the obstacles there, basically a lot of the time and effort that it takes to prepare documents for the partnership, different legal financial barriers around registration, particularly for community-based organizations, particularly those led by refugees or displaced persons. The weighting criteria when selection of partners happens are not always favorable for smaller organizations. There are a lot of other things, complexity of documents, etc. And at the bottom, you see some of the things that we've tried to do already over the past few years and that we're continuing to do with the reforms that we're introducing still later this year to try and address some of that. So we've already tried to reduce some of the requirements over the past few years, and we've introduced a new grant agreement for refugee-led and other community-based organizations to work directly with UNHCR to give them an opportunity to partner with us directly for community-based activities, but also use the funding that they get through these grant agreements to strengthen their internal capacity, basically through through learning the process, what is involved, project management, etc., getting a lot of support also from the UNHCR operation. So we launched this about 2 years ago, and have signed about 100 of these agreements with over 80 small refugee-led organizations all over the world, including a few in Uganda, I believe, in this region. So this is really something that we would like to expand and to utilize more, not only because it allows for the involvement of communities directly in the programming, but also because it gives that exposure to small organizations and that opportunity to build their internal capacity and to grow as an organization, etc. It's also obviously in line with more sort of sustainability localization efforts. We really hope that that could be something that can also be expanded still in this region. Other things, yes, in terms of reducing the reporting requirements, this is something that we're going to speak about still a little bit more. It's very important that we continue in this direction, and we also look forward to hearing from you of what you think some of the other things that we could do are. If we go to the next slide, now more generally back to, thank you, to our overall reform efforts. All of these 8 areas are basically things that we hope our reforms are going to help us introduce. Maybe I won't be able to speak to all of them, but more predictability over a multi-year period. I think we've already mentioned that. Greater predictability, we'll speak about that in a moment. Financial simplification, very important. So this is a big part of the systems reforms that are going to come online later this year, and for which we have to prepare now. And I'm sure many of our partners have heard about this already from their UNHCR offices. All of this is geared at making it easier to work with UNHCR and for us to be able to provide more assurance without making our processes quite so heavy as they have been. So we're really looking forward to this. All of these things, of course, are also going to benefit community-based organizations. We've already made quite a lot of progress on some of these areas since 2020, 2021, with simplification of some of our agreements and templates, although we know that it's something that takes time also in terms of implementation in all country offices. Sometimes there are differences. We've heard feedback from you on that. And it's something that we're continuing to work on with our offices throughout the region. There are a lot of things that we've already tried to flexibilize, differentiated controls based on the capacity of a partner, the grant agreements I already mentioned, different training activities and initiatives that we have in place for our partners to help them build capacity on fraud prevention, procurement rules, things like that. But now we're really moving towards real re-engineering, so to speak, of our processes and our systems because of our new digital partner platform, PROMS, which Rob will talk about in more detail also. And in order for you all to make it easier to understand all of these, how all of these different things fit together, we'll try to put all of our different guidance notes and policy and instruction documents that we have had as UNHCR and that have created confusion even internally for our colleagues in the past, and which is why there have been quite a lot of differences sometimes in implementation of our rules, so to speak, around partnership management. We're trying to move away from that and have a much more clear and coherent guidance framework in a new program handbook, which we will also turn into a partner handbook to update the one that we currently have, which is from 3 or 4 years ago and no longer up to date with our latest reforms. So we hope that by the end of this year, early next year, we will have a new partner handbook to explain all of these processes to our partners in more detail and to help you in working with us in that. then let me see if I can change the slide myself. Yeah, there it is. Okay, sorry, wrong one. This is the right one, thank you. That's quite a full slide. It looks a little bit at the overall life cycle, so to speak, of a partnership from the early multi-year planning stage all the way through to negotiating a budget, implementing the project, and an audit and closure of the actual project. And some of the things that our different reforms fit into this cycle. We've already talked about some of these. Important, perhaps, the use of the UN partner portal, that we want to use that even more than we already have in these different processes, and also to ensure better harmonization with other UN agencies in order to ease some of the burden on our partners. If we can all use the information that we have available as UN agencies and the different assessments that we're doing, if we can use this more coherently and more systematically across the UN system, that makes it easier for you as our partners to not have to repeat different assessments with different agencies. I've already mentioned the partner handbook. Rob will speak in a second about our new partner agreements and also about the digitalization of our partnership management, which we really hope is going to be a big step forward for all of us together to manage our partnerships in a more modern way and make the information more accessible to everyone, hopefully decreasing the burden of different people asking the same questions to different parts of the process, because we should all have it available in our new solution in PROMS. Maybe I'll leave it at that, Rob, and hand back over to you, if that's okay.
Thanks, Katharina. So indeed, one of the things that we're trying to address is the fact that our partnership agreements themselves are fairly lengthy documents with provisions which are sometimes confusing and complex and very legalistic. We've tried to simplify those over the last couple of years. And if you were to compare an agreement today to the agreement that was in use about 4 years ago, it's about half the size in length, and the language is significantly simpler. But more can be done, and what we will be rolling out in the course of the coming weeks, months, is a different framework to the one that we've used previously. Most of our agreements today are single-year agreements which cover the period 1st of January through to 31st of December, even though in the majority of cases, our partners have been selected for 2 or 3 or possibly 4 years. And we can, just as some other UN organizations do, we can do a better job of having a multi-year agreement to collaborate, even if we don't have the ability to commit an amount of money for more than just 1 year ahead. That is the unfortunate reality, which I think Addis mentioned in the chat a minute ago, alluding to the fact that the amount of money that is available for humanitarian operations around the world, but certainly in Africa, is not keeping pace with the increasing level of need. And so the amount of resources that are available for any organization, including ourselves, for our own delivery of cash, or whether it be for funding of our partners, it's not keeping pace with the increasing need. Nevertheless, we can commit ourselves to working together. And by working together and committing ourselves for 2 or 3 or 4 years, we can set a calendar of action where we know that at least we're going to be working together, we're going to have regular discussions, we're not going to pull our funding at the last second, we are going to collaborate and talk and discuss, and we are going to amplify messages. We are going to try to help you get access to discussion, dialogue, to donors, to amplify your operations. And we can do that if we commit together to a multi-year collaboration. The funding will likely have to still be of an annual nature because of the way in which UNHCR receives its funding. We are not receiving, despite the grand bargain, we are not receiving multi-year and unearmarked contributions at a level that is necessary for us to be able to provide a multi-year commitment of funding to our partners. So we are changing the framework of our partnership agreements. It will not solve every problem, but we hope that it will allow for some of the simplifications that were alluded to on the previous slides. Katerina mentioned systems change. UNHCR is making changes to a number of corporate systems, and I will show you a fairly intimidating slide on the next up. But one of the most exciting of these systems that is coming on board, that is coming online, is called PROMS. It stands for Project Reporting, Oversight and Monitoring Solution. You may know that much of what constitutes a partnership with UNHCR involves a significant amount of paperwork, a huge raft of papers being printed, signed, then scanned and uploaded into our systems, and that creates delays, it creates frustration, it just slows down a process when we really should be working together at the field level, focusing on quality delivery of protection and assistance. So PROMS will be an application that is available and to our partners. So our partners can work with us on this solution using an application which can be accessed from any smartphone or from any computer or from a iPad or a other form of device. And you will be able to do everything in that with a little bit of training. You will be able to do everything in that to satisfy our needs as the provider of funds. So it comprises 3 elements, and really it's just the top 2 that will be of interest to you. It is how you communicate with us in terms of mail and in terms of documents. And it is how we will together monitor what is being delivered on the ground, what is being executed on the ground. And if you see that there is a problem or an issue that needs to be addressed by us, you can task us with an action. If, for example, you're a health provider and we are providing medicine, we've said that we will provide medicine to your to your pharmacy on a particular date and it hasn't arrived, then you can raise a task or an issue with us through this application that we will need to respond to. And it works the other way around as well. If we, in a visit to a camp, we notice that the schools are closed when they shouldn't be, we can alert you to what we see. It will enable that immediate correspondence and immediate working with each other in a way that is compatible with the principles of partnership: equality, transparency, results orientation, complementarity. So we're very hopeful that this will be a benefit to all of us. Now, I promised you an intimidating slide. Here it is. You don't need to know almost anything about what is on this slide. It is though, for UNHCR colleagues, this is what we are confronted with this year. We have a number of corporate systems internally that are changing substantially, from our systems dealing with finance and supply, to those that deal with human resources, to those that work with our donors and who's providing us with funding, and those systems that deal with how we monitor our achievement of results. Again, you don't need to be worried about this. It's just to say that we are going through a massive change internally in terms of our systems. We hope and are doing everything that we can to ensure that this will go smoothly. And we have confidence that at the other end of this exercise, we will be realizing with you many of those important changes that Katharina mentioned before, in terms of simplification, a focus on results, and a reduction in bureaucracy. It does, however, mean that in the coming months, we have to internally turn off some systems, migrate data to new systems, and then turn on the new systems. And that doesn't happen overnight. It happens over the course of several weeks. And so we do have some very important dates coming up. I think these may have already have been communicated to you from our regional office or by our country offices. And perhaps at this point, I will just ask Deraje if he wishes to speak to this slide. I'm not sure if his audio is working at the moment, but if you wish to, Deraje, or I can do so.
Good morning. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
It's not great, Deraje. Sorry.
Yeah, I still have problems. I'm really sorry about this.
No problem. Then Deraje, allow me to say just a couple of words. So the normal reporting period for mid-year reporting by our partners is usually around about July. And that would take a snapshot of the financial situation as of the end of June. But here we want to, because of these systems, and we don't want to jeopardize the successful implementation of those systems and come out with a mess on the other end, we have asked that that mid-year financial reports to be submitted covering up to the end of May, so instead of the end of June. And it would be necessary to do so in order for the next installment to be released in early July, which is necessary to ensure that partners have the cash to take them through until end of September, early October. That's a crucial one. Any amendments or any new partnership agreements should be executed in our systems by the last week of June. And between July through to the end of September, we will have limited ability to make changes and to enter into new agreements. It's not the busiest time of the year in the absence of an emergency. Of course, if there is an emergency, we will still be able to respond. There are measures for that, but it's very important that we try not to interrupt operations of our partners during this period. That's why we want to ensure that cash is available to you to take you through until the end of September. So if I speak any longer, I'm dangerously close to interrupting the next session. So I will pause here, and to the extent that there are questions in the chat that we can respond to, then we may just keep that until a little bit later. At this point, I'll stop talking. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for keeping the time. We're getting into the Q&A session. I see that some of you have dropped some questions on the chat box. So I will read 3 questions, then let Rob and Katharina respond to that. Okay. Okay, so the first one, and I'll read out the ones that haven't been responded to by Katharina on the chat, because I've seen she has had responded to some of them. So I'll start with the last question. If multi-year funding reporting is done quarterly, it will increase accountability and more impact. Okay, that's more of a comment. Is UNHCR the sole manager and owner of this system? And is this a system that may be shared with other organizations in order to increase organizational productivity? So that's the first question.
Gideon, do you want me to respond to that one, or would you like?
Please go ahead.
Okay. So the system that I referred to, PROMS, it's not developed by UNHCR. This is actually very important. It's a what's called an off-the-shelf product, which is available globally already to any organization that's involved in project management. It's highly used in the construction sector. It's one of the most popular products in the construction sector. You wouldn't ordinarily think of that being useful for humanitarian operations, but it is very useful at its core for collaboration and for tasking one another, corresponding with one another, and it's very useful and good in situations where there is low bandwidth and where connectivity is not strong. So it is available to anybody on the marketplace. You don't have to pay anything to participate in that. I mean, you will register as an organization, and it allows for, but we don't want to run before we can walk with these new systems, but it will allow for organizations within one country to be corresponding with each other. So if, for example, in a refugee camp, whether it's Dadaab or Kakuma or somewhere else, if we are working with 15 organizations, then any one of those 15 organizations can use PROMS to work and communicate with each other. we don't want to, as I said, run before we can walk. We need to start slowly with this and ensure that our colleagues are using it appropriately and that it's fulfilling the needs. But the potential is there for this resource to be available for a lot of organizations within the local context.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. And just to follow up on your response, we do know and anticipate that this system will be requiring the use of internet services, and not so many places have that reliable internet. Is that something that is being looked at? And as you reflect on that, something that also goes hand in hand with that question is, does UNHCR have any plan to invest into its partners to align with these changes? So perhaps you could take those two, then we proceed to the next questions.
Yeah, so in terms of internet, if you're logged into this meeting, you have access to internet at present. If you've been able to apply through the UN Partner Portal for opportunities with us or with other organizations, you have access to internet, at least at some point in some place. And even for just our current agreements, you will need to be corresponding with us through email or some function. And we know that connectivity around the world is not even, but we also know that in so many of our contexts, refugees and displaced persons are increasingly using mobile phones for financial transactions, whether it's M-Pesa or some other form of mobile money, and communications through WhatsApp, etc. So there is usually some access to internet, even if it is small and the bandwidth is not great. This product we have chosen is very good in those circumstances relative to others. And if there is no internet in a place, there is still some functionality in that can be used even without internet. And when the user goes back into range of a network, what they have done offline will automatically be uploaded into the system. Now, building capacity of partners, we don't want to see building capacity of partners as being building your capacity to comply with our requirements. That's not building capacity. That's not training. And it's not for us to ultimately determine what is the capacity you need to build. It's actually for you to decide on your own capacity building and growth path. We should be supporting you in that journey. And so we will certainly support you in using this system. Hopefully, you will find that it is easy to do. It will take just a little bit of awareness and knowledge, but we hope that you will find after use of it for a very short period of time, you'll get used to it and it won't be difficult. And we can focus more on those broader efforts that you would have to be improving your capacity according to what you believe you need to be doing. I'm not sure if that answered it, Gideon.
I believe so.
Okay.
I think also a related question would be, do partners need to revise some of their policies like financial and procurement and management? Also asked by from the chat. That's a question from the chat.
Yeah, thank you. So on that, I don't know exactly what your policies and procedures currently are, and so I wouldn't be able to give a specific piece of advice on that. But one thing perhaps that could be said is that we don't want any partner to be setting up its financial rules or procedures or whatever it may be relating to procurement or assets management. We don't want you to set that up just simply so that you can comply with our needs. We would like you to build whatever systems and capacities and procedures and rules that you need for your organization. And when you do that, we want to rely upon your ability to comply with those and manage risk. So, Gideon, you're with HIAS. It's a big international NGO. You have strong financial rules and regulations and procurement frameworks, asset management frameworks. You shouldn't have to change anything of those to work with UNHCR. So once an organization reaches a level where it has those internal controls to manage itself, we should simply rely upon you to be able to manage risk and deal with that. Where an organization may not yet have built up a certain capacity, then we should be able to, along with the likes of ICFA and others, including HIAS and other international NGOs, we hope that collectively we can provide advice and good practice and assistance to those organizations who wish to build a stronger procurement capacity, or build a stronger financial system, build a stronger reporting system. And so I think that some of us can provide that assistance, and we should be working together in that way. Back to you, Gideon.
Right. Another question from Adis. Will this be integrated with the partner portal at some point?
No, good question, Adis. I don't want to raise expectations to a point that I wouldn't be able to deliver. The UN Partner Portal is a really important, as the word suggests, the portal. The portal is a way of organizations to enter and for us to work with a community to establish a relationship. So you register once, and registering once means that UNICEF, us, UNFPA, WFP, other members of the UN, we will not require you to do another form of registration. You keep one profile up to date, and that should be sufficient for you to be able to access opportunities of everybody in the UN. Once you have a relationship with any UN agency, then each UN agency has, I want to avoid using the term different because it sounds like we're vastly different and confusing matters, but we do have different requirements. And as much as we would like to be able to harmonize and use exactly the same product for everybody, it's not yet possible, because UNHCR is not the same as UNICEF. We don't have the same regulatory requirements. We don't have the same corporate enterprise systems. And UNICEF and WFP, UNHCR, we're not the same as UN OCHA, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. We're all different. That's not, and as much as we would like to be able to have exactly the same, it's we're not yet there. So I will just say that we are committed to ensuring that there is harmonization and coherence wherever possible. And we will continue to ensure that we together reduce duplicative effort and wasted effort on the part of the partner community.
No, thank you for that. The next two questions would be in relation to what Katharina had presented on engagement with the CBOs. So from Dr. Yvonne, can UNHCR come up with a program on building capacity for RLOs, especially on database collection and analysis? Secondly, capacity strengthening on financial procurement. The next question that is related to that is, again, from Dr. Yvonne, can UNHCR come up with a plan or a program to organize assessment meetings with RLOs? I think if this is done, RLOs' challenges and successes can be shared and improvement can be made for better impact. Terina?
Yeah, thank you. I think we already have a training program on procurement, but it's for all partners generally, and perhaps for our perhaps a bit detailed for RLOs. We can look into that with the partner handbook that I already mentioned, and of course the training materials on proms, etc. that will be made available once all our new systems and procedures come online, which is not yet the case. We can see for our partner platform what we can develop specifically in addition that could be helpful for RLOs. It's a very good suggestion. We can share via the regional bureau the invitations to the procurement seminars that are already scheduled, but again, they are for all partners, so not specifically RLOs. Might be a bit much. But yeah, thank you. Very good suggestion. Also on database collection analysis. I'll have to see what we have available. We currently have some sort of broader training materials that are developed for UNHCR staff that are accessible for partners via our old learning platform. But since we're changing everything, we'll need to see what is accessible on the future learning platform. But it's a very good point that we can take down and keep in mind for what we're looking at for developing for the new platforms. Thank you.
I'd just like to add to what Katharina said. I think that indeed there's a lot of training materials out there. And there's no reason why UNHCR needs to reinvent the wheel. I mean, I don't know, Gideon, whether HIAS has some materials that could be of benefit to RLOs. And I don't know, Marcus, whether ICFA has certain materials. But I think, and I know that UNICEF has some excellent materials as well. So it's incumbent upon us to ensure that where good materials exist, that organizations of all shapes and sizes can benefit from them. And what are the best tools and systems that are available? 3 years ago, it was unheard of to think that you could have a almost complete system for financial and procurement and management. You could have a complete one for less than tens of thousands of dollars. Nowadays, you can get excellent products for a subscription fee of $30 a month. And we can support with some financial contributions for you to subscribe to one of these products for 3-4 years. So it's, and we don't want to force upon anybody to have any particular financial system, but I think that there are some very good ones on the market, and if you choose some, and maybe it's incumbent upon us to help you find what are the good ones out there. And once you identify them, then we can use one of these small grants that Katerina mentioned to support you with the license fees and trainings for those years. So excellent question. I hope we can really deliver on this together.
Thank you, Rob and Katerina. And yes, as you've mentioned, there are existing resources that really do touch upon some of these issues. I do know that there are a number of international NGOs that have databases collected for not only literature on, so for instance, localization, but also training materials that would really come in handy to build capacity of some of these other laws. To the last question, which is from Okiria Thomas, most of the other laws don't have websites to access the UN portal. How will it work for those without a website?
Maybe I misunderstood the question. You don't need to have a website to access the UN partner portal. You need to have internet connectivity, and we can even paste in the chat where the website is for the UN partner portal. And then you can see some of the materials there, and you can log on and register. But I might have misunderstood the need. But maybe back to you, Gideon, and we can follow up if necessary.
Yeah, all right. I think you got it right. And just to make a note that there's really great interest from the partners as relates to the technical aspects of some of these solutions that will be coming on board as part of the reforms. And so perhaps even a separate session to really unpack the technicalities of it would be really great. And I've seen you have posted it, the link to the partner portal. And so for those of you who are interested can have a look at that. So that's the end of our Q&A session for this point. However, you can still post your questions, and Katerina and Robert would respond to them on the chat. The next part of the session is a presentation from Grace Ogutu, who's going to do a presentation regarding from an NGO perspectives as it relates to some of these partner reforms and on partnership generally speaking. So welcome, Grace.
Thank you, Gideon. And I must say it's a pleasure to be in this consultation forum. I will give a perspective from the National NGO on partnership. And just before I go to my point, I must thank the presenters who have just left the podium, that is Robert and Katerina, for that in-depth information, because most of my concerns have been answered, and therefore I will be very brief to give some of the concerns that has not been answered. To start with, my name is Grace, as it has been said, and I am the head of programs of Girl Child Africa Foundation, South Sudan. One of the concerns as a national NGO that we want to put forth is that we need to have an inclusive kind of partnership. I must appreciate UNHCR for the steps they have taken to bring on board different groups, including refugee-led organizations. But yes, we feel that this is not enough. We need to bring on board women-led organizations. We need to bring on board people with disability. We need to bring on board youth-led organizations, because when a decision is being made and these groups' voices are represented, I believe that it is something that is really beneficial for the implementation of the localization agenda. Second to that, I would say that We also need to go into the budgets. One of the challenges that we as the national organizations are facing are inadequate funding. And therefore, when you look at the budget that sometime our donors give to us, it's not really equivalent to what should be implemented. And therefore, this brings the question of quality of work that is being done. As a national NGO, yes, you want to implement a project. The project was designed for like $300,000 per year. But since you are being subgranted, you'll find that a partner gives you like 50,000 USD per year. So because you are in need and you don't want to lose the relationship with your partner, you will say, yes, we will do the implementation. But in the long run, you will find that the quality of work that is being done is not equivalent to what is the expectation from your donors or from your partners. And therefore, as a national NGO, we request that you need to look into some kind of items like office rent and utilities. They need to be incorporated in the budget. You need to look into some of the indirect costs like taxes, like insurance, like the security procedures. They need to be incorporated in the budget. We need to provide assets. I know this has been captured in your presentation, but yes, it is really important for us as national NGOs to be provided with essential assets for project implementation, including laptops, vehicles, or salaries for an interim period of time. When you look at the organizational capacity strengthening, most of our partners do say that national NGOs, we don't have a capacity to implement some of the activities. And therefore, if we don't have the capacity, what should be done to ensure that we have the capacity if we are to embrace the localized kind of system? We request that in your budget, you need to give a budget line for organizational capacity strengthening, including staff training, the policy developments, governance, and security management. My next point is on responsiveness feedback. You find that as the national NGO, we may do kind of a gap analysis or assessment, then come up with our findings. We need to share these findings with our partners, but in most cases, they don't come back to us to give us their feeling towards what we have found on the ground. A project will be designed, it will be shared to you when everything is already done, so you don't have a say on that. So we feel that you should also listen to some of the feedback that are given by the national NGOs when it comes to the gap analysis, and this will really inform the actual implementation of the context-oriented programming. My last point on this is that we need an equality in partnership. As local partners, we are being treated as subcontractors, whereby after the project has been designed, you are told to go and implement. So when you go to implement the project, you don't have a say. You don't know how much is the budget. Sometimes we don't know even the donor. So when you are reporting, you will be included as an implementing partner. Maybe your name may not even feature in the report. So when it comes to partnership, we feel that there should some kind of equality when it comes to the implementation of the program. We need to be considered as part and parcel from the designing point to the implementation point and to the reporting point. So the issue of subcontracting, it's a kind of limiting some of our potentials. Then finally, I will talk of the recruitment, ethical recruitment. you'll find that when a donor or an international NGO identifies a staff from a local NGO who has a potential in the implementation of some of the activities, they will poach this staff. So in the process of poaching the staff, we don't really understand how they want us to develop, because if this staff can really empower the rest of the staffs, then it will drive or it will move the national NGO forward. But if you poach this staff to be your staff, then what do you expect the national NGOs to do? So we feel that if there is a need to recruit your staffs, there is no need of poaching a staff from national NGO. You better do a kind of an ethical kind of recruitment. With that, I will say these are some of the concerns, because most of our points were already answered by Robert and Katharina. So these are some of the concerns that we feel that should be addressed when it comes to partnering with the national NGOs. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Grace, for those insightful remarks on partnership. We will be moving to the next point, and this will include record sessions. Marcus, can we put up the slide on the questions? Yes, so you will be separated into groups that will be looking at some of these questions. You have 3 questions, and reflecting upon the 2 presentations, provide responses to these questions.
Thank you all.
Yes.
Fruitful discussions.
Hello.
Hello, Judith. We are back in the plenary room. Any additional comments you can have on the chat box. So this next part of the session will entail getting presentations from the breakout rooms that you've had. And I do hope that you did select delegates who are going to present to the plenary. So we have 15 minutes and we begin now. So from group 1.
That is you, Gideon.
Yes. Katrina, kindly.
I was made rapporteur. So we had a really good discussion. Lots of people participated around the questions of some reactions around the new system. So colleagues said it'll be really important to have a good plan to roll this out, these new systems, and make sure that the orientation to partners is not rushed, because the organizations don't have the same capacities, and the UNHCR colleagues in country are going to have to mentor the partners to make sure that they can implement all of this properly and understand how it works. There was also, so there were quite a lot of comments around that. Also, how RLOs will be able to use this. There were questions. How will they be able to use it? And then around, there was quite a lot of appreciation from the colleagues who spoke up about the direction this is going in and the new system, reminding us that we shouldn't be spending all our time on the new system, but also leave time for implementation, which of course is very much the idea of it. But the stress on the importance of training was mentioned by several of the speakers. There was also a general something about data being shared, or not data being shared, but around assessments that are happening by the partners, that they need to be integrated need to be shared, the information about assessments that are happening in community level. Is this a system that would be doing that or not? How does these kind of assessments on this general situation of the population, how does that feed back into UNHCR programming, looking at the overall situation of refugees, if they're getting food support or livelihood support, how are they doing overall? The programming should be based on that. It shouldn't just be looking at what UNHCR is doing. So that was more of a general comment. And the need to integrate this feedback back and forth between partners and UNHCR in a system, that was something that colleagues appreciated. There's also general remark reminding us of the need to better incorporate disability in our programming, deliver programs that seek to empower refugees with disabilities and look at self-reliance rather than continuing dependence on assistance. Those are the notes I took, but Gideon, you may have taken others if you want to complement. Thank you.
And I think you did a good job at summing it all up. So thank you. The next group, room 2.
That would be Grace.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. In our group, we agreed that having a genuine partnership involving all the partnership in all the project life cycle will be a plus, unless there is an issue why they should not be involved in all the processes. Then second point on that, they said that involving the beneficiaries to get their views also is required for a healthy or a genuine partnership. Also, they said there is need for building the capacity of everyone to be in line with what the donor requires. One of the participants said that financial budget needs to be improved, especially on the points which were raised by the local partners. And then there is also need for capacity building as well. Allocation of the real fund for a localization should also be looked into. Much has been said about localization, but when it comes to real funding, then it becomes a challenge. Our second question was what has worked well and what has not worked well. So what has worked well? They said there is an improvement of new registration in the registration processes, and also the promotion of consortiums has worked so well. Joining monitoring of UNHCR and partners has also worked so well. And then sharing ideas with the partners also has worked so well. What has not worked so well? They talked of localization has not worked so well. Just as I said, much has been said, but when it comes to real funding, then there is still a challenge. Another point which was raised is that use of data by UNHCR needs to be harmonized, in that you will find that data has been shared, but when you go to a given location or a given point, you'll find that the same data which has been shared by other people is missing in some location. Shared information from UNHCR, there was a complaint that some information can be received by some members and other members may miss out the same information. There was a concern from Uganda, from the Office of the Prime Minister, not working closely with the UNHCR. So this was a concern raised that UNHCR need to work closely with the Office of the Prime Minister, that is in Uganda. There is also need to widen the partnership. This was already raised. There is need for widening partnership. Capacity building on database management was also raised. And finally, there was a request for a roundtable discussion that when people sit together and discuss, then good solutions may be reached at. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. The last group, room 3, I believe, kindly give us 2 minutes of your presentation.
Thank you, Gideon. So we had from colleagues from different countries, including South Sudan, Somalia, Burundi, and Kenya. And I'd like to thank for their candid input. There is a need for prompt feedback to partners on proposals from UNHCR. I think some colleagues appreciated the presentation by Robert and what was highlighted and actually echoed that in terms of questions from partners. One recommendation from a colleague from South Sudan was that in addition to providing funding to refugee-led organizations, that there could be some specific funding targeting women-led organizations as well that are working with refugees and other displaced communities. Some colleagues felt that indeed there has been an equality in partnership in response to Chris's presentation. But it was felt that there has been like a movement towards addressing some of these challenges since 2019. Last and not least, in addition to this, was the introduction of the multi-year funding was taken up by colleagues, but colleagues felt that UNHCR should make sure there's continued and adequate funding to ensure long-term impact. I think the other thing that I thought was quite interesting also from a colleague from Kenya was the importance of UNHCR also enhancing networking between countries. So linking its implementing partners across borders so that NGOs, for instance, who are working in Kenya and supporting South Sudanese refugees can collaborate with their counterparts in South Sudan to enhance livelihoods for young refugees in Kenya. I think that's it, but if there's anything I missed out, I'd like to encourage colleagues also to chip in. Over to you, Gideon.
Yes, good. I want to add the point of feedback on UN portal. I think you forgot it, so it is very important also, always we get the feedback after the submission of proposals. As an example, in South Sudan here, if you go to UN portal now, you see, projects are under review, and it was 2020. So I think there's a need, to update on the partners of their proposal status. Over.
Thank you all. Thank you so much for those presentations, and truly it's a testament to our candidness in conversation. I would want to welcome our colleagues from UNHCR to give sort of a feedback on some of the key points that have been noted from the discussions before the end of the session. Welcome, Rob and Katrina.
Thanks, Gideon, and thanks to everybody. Great sessions, and really happy that we could participate. I will be leaving in 7 minutes for exactly the same forum in Asia. So you'll have to forgive me. I will drop out very shortly. But there's some really good feedback, and I think we will address many of much of the points. So a couple of things. As I mentioned before, capacity building, we don't need to be reinventing wheels that are already made by another organization. Gideon and other colleagues, if there's good materials that you have that could be of benefit to refugee-led organizations, I think we need to find a way of ensuring that that is available. We will certainly take good products of others and pass them on. I think there was a point made earlier which suggested that some organizations have felt that UNHCR takes their successes and passes them off as UNHCR's and does not say that these organizations are the ones who actually produced the benefit or the result on the ground. That's not good, and we need to ensure that we are amplifying and we are advertising the work of organizations that we work with. So that was a bit worrying. I hope that that's not commonplace. If it is, then we need to definitely address it. There were points made by Grace before about what is a brain drain, where big organizations come in put big salaries that then either attract the best people away from local organizations, or they just make the local organizations uncompetitive for other people to join. That's also something that needs to be addressed. And to the extent that UNHCR can influence it, we will try to do so. There was another point, very important point, about us sometimes having selection criteria for selecting partners based upon how much other money the partner can bring to that partnership. That is not a good criteria anymore, and we are not going to be advertising that be used in every case as we've done in the past. So that is one of the obstacles that Katerina mentioned on her slide that we need to be taking away. I'll stop there. I've gotten a lot more and many more notes from this, but I will now hand over to Katerina, and I don't know if Deraje's microphone is also working now to respond as well. Over to you, Katerina.
Thanks, Rob. Maybe in terms of some of the questions around systems and training and all of that, I had mentioned it earlier in the chat, but maybe not everyone saw it. But the idea is very much that the UNHCR operations would be working with their partners on when everyone is able to start joining the new system, using the new system, having a training for them, various trainings for them. We don't want to just all do one big training and then you have to absorb everything, and we know that that's not going to be possible. So it will be staggered over almost a year to kind of align with the program cycle and what you need to know, and make sure that this isn't rushed and it's not overwhelming. But of course, it will be a little bit difficult at the beginning to start doing processes in a system that used to be done offline. It is a change of practice. It is something that people need to get used to, but the idea is very much that the UNHCR offices will be there for you to speak with and to help you, mentor you, I think was the word that the colleague used in our group, to make sure that you know how to use it and be brought on gradually. For some of the other questions, I think, we had some. I'm not sure if there are more questions that haven't been addressed yet by Rob. I'm just trying to kind of go through my notes here. But colleagues, if there are questions that you think we haven't answered yet, then I can.
Gideon,
Yes.
I apologize. I have to leave now to join another meeting, but sincere thanks to you, to Marcus, to everybody in ICFA, and to everybody who participated today. Hugely appreciated, and thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, Rob. Katrina, I think we're wrapping it all up. And again, to everyone really availing yourself for these discussions, we thank you so much for being here, and also in your openness and your candidness in providing feedback to some of the presentations. And we do hope that this is not the end of it all. You'll be reaching out to your UNHCR colleagues in the various country offices, as well as partners to collaborate on the feedback to UNHCR. So once more, thank you so much for being here and for your time and your willingness to contribute to these discussions. I believe that marks the end of this session, and I bid you all well and have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Gideon, please allow me to thank you as the moderator for this session, and to echo your thanks to the panelists for a great job, for all of you who spoke, and for the really candid feedback to UNHCR on how we can improve, and also to the UNHCR colleagues for acknowledging and clarifying where we've made progress, but also acknowledging where we can learn and improve. So thank you so much for that. And I'm really glad what Rob said is he's using this session actually to inform his next session. So it shows that this region is really informing the policy and practice of UNHCR, not only for ourselves in this region, but globally. So thank you all for that discussion. You can see how important it has been. I will congratulate you on closing this session, but would like you to encourage you, just take your coffee break. Don't log off. We are using this same connection for our closing session, where you listen to the recommendations, some from this session, but from other sessions. I liked what Gideon said. He said partnership is the golden thread which weaves through. So please don't go away, because we can't have livelihoods without partnerships. So please stay online and be ready for the session of concluding recommendations and remarks from ICFA and UNHCR. Thank you. Look forward to the last session.